He was like, there's no way that's human tech. That is alien technology.
Hello and welcome back to Spooky and Kooky.
As always, if you're into anything spooky, horror, paranormal, conspiracy, then you're in the right place. So enjoy this episode.
Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about aliens.
Yep.
In particular, because aliens is such a big topic, really.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do this in a few goes.
Yeah, there's so many branches of this weird tree. But there's a new documentary that's come out on Netflix that we both watched. So we're not going to do a watchery section. The whole thing is kind of like a watchery.
Yeah, it's all inspired by the documentary.
Yes. So, yeah, we'll go into it.
Yeah. How many episodes? Was it 6 episodes? 7 episodes?
6 episodes, and I binged them all in one go. I know you watched them over a longer period of time, but I binged them all in one.
Yeah, I did try and spread it out just to try and keep it in my memory for longer, but I would have binged it otherwise if we weren't talking about it today.
And I thought it was really good.
It was really good, to be fair. And I liked that some of the stuff they actually did, like tests to back up some of the theories.
Yes. Even though the tests were somewhat inconclusive, a lot of them.
Yeah, but it was just nice to see some actual...
It makes it less of a joke.
Yeah, some actual science was added
to it.
Yeah, which I appreciated.
But yeah, the guy who the documentary sort of follows is called George Knapp, who's an investigative journalist. I think he's also a radio host and a news presenter.
Yeah.
And a lot of his work over the past 30 years have been interest in the paranormal things, especially aliens and UFOs. And throughout this, I'm going to use the term UFO.
Not
I know
UAP.
UAP. I know there's UAP, the new one, but I don't like change, so I'm going to stick to UFO. I don't know what you're doing, but that's what I'm doing.
When I was doing my notes, I did have UFO, and then I deleted it to UAP because I was like, I feel like that's a thing now.
Yeah. They're both the same thing. Like, when you actually break it down, they're both the same thing. But he's had an interest in that, and I believe he was actually involved, or he was the journalist who broke the Area 51 story.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, because people didn't know it, or people speculated that the very secret base was a thing and the government denied it, and he broke the story. So he's quite a renowned guy in the field, I think.
I can't believe that he's been doing it so long and he's not been like worn down, because
I found it very strange that he had shots in the documentary of his house.
Oh, I didn't really think about that.
He showed it, his home from the front.
Yeah,
he said it was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was like, I'm worried for your safety, man.
No, I just thought he'd be like a bit downtrodden by this point, because he must have had so much like adversity of people just thinking that he's a joke, and like...
I think you've just got to go through it. And like, I personally, you know me, I love talking about this stuff. Anything spooky, horror, paranormal, whatever. I think the joy of it for me is like the unknown of it.
Yeah.
Like, if aliens were just a thing, I probably wouldn't want to talk about it.
Really?
But because we don't know, that's what keeps me
Well, but do
guessing.
we not know? Because I feel like we do know.
I feel like we do know, but I'm always open to that little bit of doubt that creeps in, because there is no hard proof, and some things can be disputed, and it could all be hoaxes, it could all be people making stuff up. I think it's unlikely personally, but unless the government was still trying to cover it up, that's the interesting part. The whole cover-up is so, like, it tantalises me.
Yeah. It is really interesting. One thing that did really make me laugh about the documentary was when they were doing the investigation into the cattle, and they were speaking to one of the cowboys, and he was like saying how, you know, people around there don't really believe in aliens, and he was like, I don't want to say UFO, but there was an unidentified flying object. And I was like, no.
So you said UFO.
That's what it means. Okay.
I found it weird that there's so much evidence to say that the cattles can, and we'll go into the cattles in another episode, so we won't speak too much of it. But in the documentary, they pose a lot of arguments of why this couldn't have been done by humans. And then one of the cowboys is like, I think it's a group of people, the same group of people targeting me. And I thought, get online. Look up other cases. Yeah, it's not all about you, actually. So yeah, that was a really good part. Along his journey, there's an organisation called Arrow, which is a branch of the Pentagon, and they release a report that they've reviewed over 18 months all evidence or accounts of UFOs, and they basically came out saying there's nothing here. Absolutely nothing to it. It can all be explained by either known objects, or there are a few that are unexplained, but they're not significant.
Yeah, it's not enough to say, to suggest that there's something else out there.
George was pretty fuming because he was like, this is ridiculous. They've literally whitewashed everything. How do you go over everything that's ever happened in a year and 6 months? Like, that's mad.
But also they spoke to like government officials who basically said the report was a joke anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ridiculous.
He was working to create a counter report to basically say, nah, this isn't right. So it kind of follows him on that journey. And he goes to see witness accounts. He focuses on a few areas. But again, the topic is so big, he only focused on like little bits. But he focused on really interesting parts of the UFO and alien debate.
Yeah, I did find it really interesting. I enjoyed it. And I could happily watch it a couple times, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things where you might have missed something the first time and then you watch it back and you're like, oh, I didn't know about that.
And I liked that he actually spoke to the people that Arrow interviewed. He spoke to the same people, and they were like, that's
not
like they've completely not listened to my story, my account of what happened. And so I found that really interesting. Instead of them just like, you know, when it can sometimes be put in a direction to spin away of how they want it to go. It wasn't like that at all. They kind of...
Yeah.
And they had some skeptics as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
as part of the crew. So, yeah, it was quite an unbiased account, I think. I did enjoy.
Part of it was I want to say Brazilian.
Yeah, it was in Brazil. This was like one of the few accounts, quite major accounts, multiple accounts of injuries from a UAP. And it was people that were actually, that they had like laser burns on their skin. I think one lady had one on her shoulder, one had one like just above her breast.
Yeah.
And they basically sought out these people to ask what had happened, and they essentially were saying that they were down by the river and they saw this giant craft above a chestnut tree, and then all of a sudden a beam came from the craft and hit them, and they said it felt like an injection.
Yeah.
Like,
and burning.
Yeah.
Like it hurt.
Yeah, and so it was theorised that it was potentially some sort of sample taking, and that they didn't mean to hurt people. It was some sort of...
Just, you have to, you have to hurt them to get the samples.
Yeah, it was a bit odd. And I think that was the most major account of UAPs actually injuring someone.
That was
directly.
Another thing I liked about the documentary, is they always like theorised why they were doing these things. It wasn't just that they're coming here and doing it with no purpose. They were like, why are they actually here?
But yeah, we've got a couple more stories about injuries, but we'll go into those a little bit later, because I know you've got an under the sea segment.
Yeah, the under the sea bits I found quite topical at the minute, because you know the Congress hearing in America that had all those ex-servicemen, or I don't know if some of them are still serving, but they came forward and basically alluded that there could be non-human intelligence in our waters. So the under the sea bit I found really quite interesting.
Yeah.
So they start the under the sea bit by George's mate, Jeremy Corbell, who's also an investigator in the UFO world. He has a source from the CIA that they obviously protect his identity, so he's not on camera, but they send in this very bizarre video and ask George to leak it. And the video comes from a military base in the Middle East, and this particular military base has within it a super secure CIA base.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the video was obtained, and it shows on their heat signature camera a weird jellyfish type UFO going across the whole base, and apparently it goes into the most secret parts of the base.
And it can't be seen because you can see people walking around and they don't even notice it's there.
Yeah.
And its heat signature changes throughout as well, doesn't it? Which is interesting.
It's one of the weirdest UFO footages I've ever seen. The shape of it is just so bizarre. So I was thinking maybe it's a type of drone or something, but I don't know. It was just a pretty weird video that even if it's not aliens, I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah, because you would need some sort of cloaking technology to be able to do that. So if it's not alien, who the hell's...
What is it?
Yeah, it's really disconcerting, and I think it really shook them, didn't it? Which it would do.
Yeah. So they release the video and they get intelligence from another bloke who works at the CIA who's like, that's not actually the whole video. There's a bit of the video that's not shown. And I know this because I saw it before it was confiscated within the CIA. And it's where the jellyfish goes over a lake and then dips down into it without making a splash, without its heat signature changing. So just really bizarre, and it sort of spins into an episode about under the water alien life. They call them USOs, which are unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah.
So the Earth is 70% water, as we know, and large amounts of it has been unexplored, and it's like, I think you said 80% in our deep sea creature one has been unexplored, but I've heard 95, so it's between 80 and 95% has been unexplored, which is still mad.
The perfect place.
Too
high.
It's said that we know more about outer space than we do about our own oceans, so if something was wanting to live here on a base, they're going to go under the water like that.
And equally, who's to say that whatever lives under the water wasn't here before we were? So you never know.
You never know. So he meets with this guy called Rory Creamer, who's a underwater archaeologist.
Yeah.
And he works for the Department of Defence. And he said some years ago he had an experience, but he never really wanted to speak on it because it's quite frowned upon coming forward.
Yeah.
So he has held on to this, and he thinks coming towards the end of retirement, no, I want to work out what this is. Like, this is so bizarre. So his experience was that he was 1,600 metres off the coast of Hawaii, and he saw a really bright thing under the water. And when they were looking at it on the boat, it got brighter and brighter and brighter until eventually it came up, hovered for a couple of seconds, and then shot up and disappeared. He never found out what it was, and because he didn't want to come forward with it and say, oh, this could have been a USO or a UFO, he just did his own research in the Department of Defence records, and what he found was loads of ships in World War II and the Korean War and Vietnam. Lots of people in the Navy saw the same sort of things.
Yeah.
So this is something that has been going on for quite some time. So he meets with George, tells him this story, and George says, well, you know the water quite well, how would you like to go out and do your own investigation? And he says, yeah. So he brings this map with him, doesn't he? And on the paper map, there's areas that are greyed out, and I'm guessing it's a military map.
Yeah, because it's basically like redacted.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about that bit.
So he's like, this seems like the most logical place to look if we're going to look anywhere, and it's off the southern coast of California.
Yeah.
So he goes out to look in these areas, and they take a ROV, which is a remote operated device, and sonar radar scanners to map the area, and they don't really find anything too interesting. They find a boulder with a square cut out, they find a couple of things in the water that has right angles on. All of these things, they don't occur in nature, but does it necessarily lead to aliens?
It's just a bit bizarre because the big boulder, why would it even be like if it's been chopped, which it clearly had been, why would it be there?
Yeah, like
For
I
what
said,
purpose?
bizarre.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it doesn't say.
yeah,
It's just a bit weird.
Yeah, there's stuff all over the world though when you really look into it and you really go deep. And I just limited myself to what I saw in the documentary, but if you really went deep into aliens under the oceans, there's so many artifacts and big artifacts like big stone monoliths
Yeah.
that are man-made and man-cut that are just under the water in places that shouldn't be, which obviously fuels also rumours of Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was bizarre, but there was no concrete evidence of any alien activity. But what I really liked in the Under the Water episode, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so obviously I was sat there kind of watching it, like a bit like slumped, like in bed watching it, and then when they were out on the boat, they were like, "What's that in the sky?"
Yeah.
When I tell you, I
Did you
sat
scramble?
up. I was like,
What is it?
I'm locked. Yeah, I'm locked in. And then the episode ended, and they went on to the next episode. But in the next episode, they did explain while they were out there, they saw it must have been a UFO because it was a bright circular light, like perfect circle when they zoomed in on it.
Yeah.
Just watching them, just hovering there watching them. And then when they went to bed, they had cameras on the outside of the boat and the night watchman. When this thing thought no one was watching it, it came down, hovered above the water, and then went into it. And you could see around the water, the light was so bright.
It was so bright, yeah.
And it didn't make a splash.
No, it literally just like...
Descended.
Yeah. Well, say drop, but it didn't even...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know how
That spun me so much. So meanwhile, it's kind of interwoven, so there's two stories going at once. So meanwhile, while Rory's out doing his investigation, George goes off to Tampico, Mexico, because in Tampico, UFOs are just a way of life.
Yeah, everyone's
everyone
like,
knows
yeah.
about it. Yeah, and some people think that it protects them from bad weather, having the UFOs here. And George kind of theorised that there could be some sort of natural fuel that they're gathering in Tampico.
There's a mineral, it's quite mineral rich there, isn't it? So they think it could be a mineral that they're after.
So they speak to a local fisherman who was out on the water one night, and below his ship, he said it couldn't have been a submarine because it wasn't the shape of a submarine, it was literally a round circle. Below their ship, it just like appeared like this round circle of light. And their anchor got stuck and it was pulling them, I think he said it dragged them for about 20 metres and they were about to take on water. So he made the decision to cut the anchor, and anchors aren't cheap.
No, they're like 20 grand, I think.
Yeah, and he can't explain what he saw. So this is where the sciencey bit came in. George went out there with a magnetometer to assess the magnetic readings in that area where the fisherman had the experience. And then they sent it to an experienced oceanographer and geologist, and they said, I don't know what would cause those negative readings. I don't know what's the cause of the spikes on the magnetometer.
Because didn't they say there shouldn't ever be a negative reading? And it was really down on that chart.
On the graph, it was, yeah.
And they said they've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. So there was something bizarre going on in the waters, but again, you just don't know what.
Yeah. Oh, it was a good one. That was a good episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
And they were, where was it where they were saying that it was during the war when every night all those they were UAPs because they were up into there, they were coming out from the water.
Yeah.
And they were like
Following them.
Yeah, so they stationed a base out on that little island, and it really was a tiny island, to try and communicate with them. And
I don't remember that bit.
They spoke to the local fishermen that used to take them out there.
Yes! Oh my god, yeah, no, I remember.
Yeah.
And he heard them speaking gibberish.
Yeah, and he was like, they gave me a gun. So they were obviously worried because they gave me a gun to defend myself. And he said, yeah, they actually managed to communicate with whatever it was that was coming out of the water. And the Americans were there and they took all of the data,
Yeah.
and no one's ever seen it again.
Yeah.
And obviously they deny that it ever happened, but they've got recordings of it. Perfect recordings of it, not all grainy pictures and stuff like that. Actual recordings of all these UAPs coming out of the water and going back down.
Yes, because there was literally like 12 bright lights all coming out the water and just floating in the sky. It was a sight.
Yeah. And they just told the fisherman, like, obviously don't say anything about this. He was like,
keep it on the DL.
yeah. He was like, yeah.
And then he was just on the phone to George, like, yeah, I'll come on a documentary without my face blurred out.
It was a long time after though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you get a grace period for these sorts of things.
I think, well, NDAs have, I think they usually have a time limit, but I guess sometimes maybe not, depending on how confidential it is.
So I was thinking about this. A lot of accounts from people who have seen stuff, the CIA always say, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And if you don't, there's going to be a problem for you. And I was just thinking, I would be deleted so quick because there's just no way. I can't keep a secret for anything. If I saw something, I'm going to have to tell people because I just want to share it.
Yeah, but you'd probably fear for your life. So would you do it even if you thought you'd die?
So then I thought, okay, I probably wouldn't until we were on a night out. And then in the girls' toilets, after I've had a few drinks, and it would happen in the girls' toilets.
Everyone knows the girls' toilets.
Yeah. I would be telling anyone who will listen to me.
And the smoking area.
Going around
Like,
to
have you got a light? No, but let me tell you.
I ever told you about the time?
Not got a light, but I'll blow your mind.
Yeah. So I just know that, you know, it would only take a couple of weeks, couple of months.
Couple of drinks.
Literally, I'm done for. And before the keep quiet order, I just know they would come up to me and be like, do not tell anyone about this. And I'd be like, slight problem. I've already told about 50
I'll try.
people.
I'm not going to promise, but I will try my best.
Yeah. Well, you never told me this in the 5 minutes since it happened, so I've already told about 10 people. Yeah. What are you going to do about that? Delete us all? So they would have a real problem with it.
It must be really hard to keep a lid on now, like with all the social media and stuff that we can do. You'll just be like, well, it's already on, well, not TikTok anymore. It's all social media platforms.
Oh, this will only take 5 minutes, I promise. But
I should have said TikTok.
No, it's not about that. It's kind of is. But did you see there was a guy who said he saw a giant on top of a hill? And I think it was in Canada. And he put it on TikTok. And then the next day he tried to go around to the same mountain and there was a black car there and a guy saying, no, the mountain's closed, you can't come here. So then
the mountain's closed.
Yeah. Then he was documenting it, being like, there's a black car outside my house. Like, every time I go out there, it just speeds off. And then a couple
so low-key. Skirt.
Then he sees black helicopters bringing stuff in and out the mountain. Then a base seems to pop up overnight. So he's documenting all of this on his TikToks, obviously gaining like loads of views, as you would from this suspicious activity.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he goes quiet for a couple of weeks, and people are like, are you okay? Where did you go? Because a lot of people were warning him while making these TikToks, mate, I would stop because you're going to get yourself hurt.
But then surely it gets to a point where you're better off keep posting it. Because
You've
like,
already done it
surely
now.
it gives you like, there's more people that see it, so they're not going to do something to you if thousands and thousands of people have seen it.
So then there was this video that came out, and it wasn't like his other videos. All the other videos are him holding his phone and talking to the camera. This video was him standing against a wall, looking a bit dishevelled and sweaty. His eyes were a bit erratic, not gonna lie. And he wasn't holding the camera, someone else was holding the camera, and he was like, look, all of my TikToks have been for entertainment purposes only. And you can just imagine there's someone behind the camera like...
He's like, I've not been kidnapped.
And he's like, all of it is a hoax, I'm just a hoaxer, it's fine. So that's all well and good, and it's actually being debunked because what was on top of the mountain is a statue that's been there for ages, but just when you're in different views of the mountain, you can't see the statue. However, then his obituary pops up online.
Oh my god, I was going to say guy falls down mountain, and then I didn't think he would actually be dead.
I don't know how he died, but his obituary showed up online, and he's not resurfaced, and his partner's doing little, like, goodbye videos to him. So if this is a hoax, it's a very good one. If it's not, condolences.
Yeah,
like,
it was just that face. Condolences.
What else can I say now? I've been through it, but yeah, that is just mad.
That is, wow. But why? If it was a statue, but why?
Well, you don't know if it was just a freak coincidence if he died, but there's also some suspicions around his obituary, because apparently he died at a certain time, and then like 2 hours later his obituary was posted.
Oh.
It was like someone was a bit hasty.
It's like when celebrities die and they've already got the documentary out about their life, and you're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
I've had that ready to go.
Yeah, and I think the place the obituary was posted was where you could just submit your own, like, name, date of birth, whatever, to say that you had died.
So not very, like, legit.
So it's not official, but he's not resurfaced, and his partner must be in on it if it is a hoax, because she's posting goodbye videos to him, which I just think, what is all of this for then? Because he can't be making any money from his loads of views on TikTok anymore, because he's gone. And it's just a bit morbid for your partner to be like, right, I'm going to have to post these goodbye videos for you. I can never post content with you again because you're in hiding. Because you've told like 3.2 million people you're gone. So it's just one of those bizarre situations. But I just, like, it's a ride when you look into it.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't know about that. I hadn't seen that.
You need to get on TikTok more.
I mean, I thought it was on it enough. I mean, jeez.
Oh no, actually, I watched a video on it on YouTube. So you need to get on YouTube more. Get premium and get rid of the ads. Just do it.
I can't deal with the ads.
Take the plunge like me and you'll never look back.
I've got too many subscriptions. I'm too busy watching other things.
But yeah, anyway, that segment went on a bit too long, so let's just smoothly transition over to you.
Okay, well, seamlessly, I'm going to continue with injuries, but from the sense of injuries from an event instead of like an alien, actually, or a UAP. Can you say alien? Is that too presumptuous? UAP actually harming anyone.
Who are you doing this for?
I don't know.
It's only me and Liv in the room. You all right with her saying alien? I'm all right.
Is everyone out there? Is everyone out there? Okay. Yeah, so I've got two stories. This was from another documentary I'd watched a while back called Files of the Unexplained. I'll start with Terry Lovelace because he's the one that comes up first. And his is, it's just wild. But so in October 2012, Terry Lovelace woke up one morning and realised he couldn't put any weight on his right leg and his knee was in absolute agony. His wife took him to the hospital and the radiologist asked if he'd ever been in an accident, to which he replied he'd never suffered any sort of injury to that leg at all. He's then told that there's an artefact in his knee. And I'll show you, I will show you what it looks like.
Can you imagine being told that at the hospital? You'd just be like, sorry?
One more time?
Looks like, you know when you get cheese and pineapple on a stick, but without the pineapple? So just a cube of cheese on a...
Yeah, so that's his x-ray that I just showed you. So they put the x-ray up on the screen and you can see a like fingernail size square with two wires coming out, and there is no scar on his leg whatsoever. There's no evidence that anything was ever put inside there. So afterwards he's obviously like, what the hell? He starts having nightmares about the situation, and he starts having nightmares that he was abducted by aliens. And from that point on, it opens a can of worms where he's essentially repressed this memory. And it goes back to when he was in the Air Force. So in 1977, Terry Lovelace was stationed at White Man Air Force Base in western Missouri, and he was an EMT. He worked with his friend Toby, and they would often go out together, socialise together on the weekend. One day, Toby suggested that they go camping. So on the 11th of June 1977, they exited the base and drove south, where Toby said there was a piece of high ground. They found it right away and set up camp, and the two friends were chatting when all of a sudden it literally went deadly quiet around them. Like there was no sounds of anything. Toby turned his head to the west and asked Terry if those lights in the sky were there before. Terry said, well, we're in the middle of nowhere, so no, those lights weren't there before and they shouldn't be there. And what they saw was basically a triangle of lights, and they said it was 3 bright stars, and they rotated clockwise 120 degrees, and they basically started coming towards them. He said that the craft itself was about the size of Walmart. I don't know what our equivalent would be.
Yeah. Well, Asda's owned by Walmart, so I'm guessing the size of an
Asda,
which is huge.
Yeah. And it was several stories high. It had windows on, but there was light shining out of all of the windows.
It was like a supermarket, several stories high,
a giant Walmart coming along. Imagine a big old B&O. I'd be like, yes, come on.
Take me now.
Let me see what you got. And then from the dead centre of the craft, a white light, he said the same diameter of a tennis ball, came down and shot right in the middle of their campfire. And it was at that point that Terry found himself inside the craft. And he couldn't move anything but his eyes.
Oh, that's horrible.
And he heard Toby screaming, so he knew that Toby was on the craft with him as well. And he said he saw 6 or 7 beings in tan flight suits with an orange patch on their shoulder. And he was taken into what looked like a very clinical X-ray room with 2 beings in there, and they were about 7 foot tall. He said he didn't feel like he was going to die, but he knew that something bad and painful was going to happen to him. And he said he started to feel pain, but then he woke up from what felt like a deep sleep, and they were basically back in the tent, but they could see a really bright orange light above them. And they basically, he was like, Toby, what just happened? Toby, what's going on, mate? And he was like, I don't know. They watched the craft then take off. This was in the early hours of the morning. And they literally ran back to the car and just started driving home. And both of them were really feeling it. They were both in pain, both really dehydrated.
Yeah.
And they were really struggling with how light the sun was.
Yeah.
So they got back, and both of their wives were like, what the fuck has happened to you two? Look at you. And basically took them to the hospital on base. And the doctors asked Terry what had happened to him. He didn't really know what to say, because you can't just be like, I think aliens have abducted me.
They'd be like, okay.
All right, let's get some sleep, shall we? So he's just like, I honestly don't know. And he was really struggling to make sense of what happened. He was told he had flash burns on his retina, and it's basically sunburn to your eyes. Yeah. Which explained why they were struggling with driving home. And that's something that you don't just get. That is something that if you were an arc welder, you'd get that if you weren't wearing the helmet and you looked.
You've got to have really bright lights for it.
Yeah, it's pretty specialist. You can't just look at the sun. look at the sun and just get that. So he spent several nights in the hospital and they were putting this salve on his eyes. It sounded horrendous. I just couldn't deal with that. But I have an eye phobia, so it literally be my worst nightmare. I'd be like, just take them out. You're not putting that on my eyes. Absolutely not. So on the third night, an agent from the Official Office of Special Investigations came into his room, literally leant over his bed, got right up in his face, and was like, "Shall I do the accent?"
Yeah.
"Son, I know, and you know, that you two knuckleheads stumbled on something out there, and I think you know what I mean." And Terry was like,
Excuse me?
"Sir."
Back up.
Yeah. I don't need your breath in my face. I can barely see. I've got salve on my eyes.
Burn. Give me a minute.
Bruh. So Terry just didn't obviously know how to answer that, but he knew that the man knew that he'd seen the spacecraft. When Terry was released from the hospital, he was given orders by his commanding officer to never discuss what happened that night. It was called Devil's Den, was where this all happened, to anyone, and he had to cease all contact with Toby. And they issued
my friend.
Well, they issued orders for Toby to be sent off to Japan.
Toby got deported to Japan.
He wasn't Japanese, he just got sent to work.
I thought deported just... Oh, deployed.
Deployed.
Sorry, I've ruined the story. Deployed. Toby got deployed to Japan.
Yeah. And they managed... That was a bit of a stretch thinking that he was Japanese, Alice.
I wonder how Toby's doing.
I'll tell you how Toby's doing. So Terry just thought, well, I'm not going to not say goodbye to my friend. So he went by Toby's house to say bye. And when Toby answered the door, he was really dishevelled. His hair was a mess. He was clearly wearing old, dirty clothes, and his breath really smelt of alcohol. So he obviously wasn't doing very well.
Wasn't coping at all.
Yeah. And he just looked at Terry and he was like, "It happened, didn't it, Terry?" And Terry was just like, "Yeah." And they said goodbye, and that was the last time he ever saw Toby. And years later, he found out that Toby had passed away. I don't know how. I don't know if it was... Yeah, they didn't go into that. But anyway...
That's sad.
In 2017, Terry decided he was going to write a book to shine light on the incident and to try and get the government to reveal, to be more transparent. So he requested a copy of his medical records from 1977. And when he got the files, it was literally about like this thin. And he'd been in service for, I think, 6 years. So he was like, there is no way.
Yeah.
That is all my medical records. You have definitely kept some stuff back to yourself there. So he reached out to a man called Daryl Sims, and he was a private investigator in Texas, and he was a former military police officer and an agent in the CIA. And he now looks for physical and medical evidence of human and alien contact.
That's cool.
So Terry showed Daryl the x-rays and he was like, "There's no way that's human tech. That is alien technology." And yeah, they were just baffled by the fact that there was no mark or anything on his knee at all.
Even if you had it as a child, there would be a scar. And they really sort of did themselves in by going to a military hospital, because then they've got everything they need in order to then take the stuff out that they don't want him to see. They've got like full control, but I guess if he's a serviceman he had to. But that's actually mad. I'm just picturing like if like us three ever had that experience, like we're out camping, all of a sudden we see this light and then we're back in the tent just looking at each other like, did you guys just
Did that?
Are we going to talk about it, or the ride home is just silent? Everyone is just eyes forward and silent.
So Terry was like, right, I'm getting this removed. This isn't staying in my knee.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I'm not going back to like a proper hospital or anything like that. I think he got the x-rays and stuff from a chiropractor, but he was like, I'm not going back to the military base to get it taken out. So he had planned to do that in that December. On November 16th, he woke up in a lot of pain on both the tops of his legs, and he had puncture wounds on both the tops of his legs, and the device was not there anymore. It had been removed. And he has no recollection of how this happened or who it was that did it. Was it his government? Was it aliens?
That's what I was thinking. If his government knew that he was going to have it removed, they might have been like, we can't have that device out in public. We need to take it out ourselves, in which case they would have probably drugged him and done it.
And that left marks.
Yeah. Or the aliens are just like, we don't want people to know we're doing this to them. Those are fighting words. We're not here to start any wars.
This Terry is becoming a problem.
Yeah. We need to silence this man.
And my second story, so this was on the same documentary as well, but this is a story of John Burroughs. So John was an Air Force security officer stationed at RAF Brentwater's Woodbridge. So it's actually in the UK, but it's a US base.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, hello.
Closer to home, I like it.
Yeah. The event took place outside the East Gate at RAF Woodbridge in Rendlesham Forest on the 26th of December 1980 at 3 a.m. So John was with his supervisor when they saw some strange lights in the sky coming down into the forest. They decided to get a squad together to investigate, see if something had crashed into the forest itself. So they left the base and they got as far as they could down a service road, but they were then blocked by a fence. John said that he really got an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. And the forest itself had a white light in it. He said within the white light, there seemed to be an oval of a red type ball with blue lights and a white light below it. And eventually it rose up into the trees and just like shot off. So they just thought, what do we do? The higher ups all said, we have no idea what this is. So in daylight, can you guys go back and investigate it further? So that's exactly what they did. When they got back there, they saw indentations on the ground, like something had landed there. And there was damage to the canopy as well, where it had shot up into the trees. John didn't think much more of the incident, and he served out a further 2 years until he left the Woodbridge Air Force Base. The Air Force classified John's documents, but somehow some of the names of the people that were involved of the incident got leaked, and CNN picked it up.
Ooh.
And they basically did a story about it, and they tracked him down to try and get information out of him, but he declined to be interviewed because he said he'd signed an NDA and he didn't want to break that. The information was actually leaked through a memo at the Ministry of Defence. So the Air Force and the MOD couldn't actually deny it anymore because it was literally there on paper. Even though John refused, some of the other people in the event came forward, but anonymously. So you can, when they black out the person, so they're sat there talking, but they're blacked out. But John declined. He said when he entered the Air Force, he had a clean bill of health, but when he did an exit physical in 1988, it showed that he had heart damage.
Ooh.
Eventually, he also started to have problems with his eyes too. So he went to the doctors to get them checked, and they asked if he had ever been exposed to radiation, to which he said, no, not that I'm aware of. And they said, well, we've confirmed that you've got radiation damage to your eyes. So at that point, he thought, how has this happened?
Yeah.
And he remembered the night of the UAP event. He wasn't feeling well afterwards. And a couple of days afterwards, he wasn't feeling well. But it wasn't bad enough for him to connect it to the event. But retrospectively, he did some research into it. And all of those things that he was feeling, he thinks were as of a direct result of that event in the woods. So he did a Freedom of Information request on his medical records, and his request was denied. At this point, he approached Cheryl Bennett. So she was staff assistant to Senator John McCain, and she was in charge of assisting people like John who were having issues with the VA. So that's Veterans Affairs. So if they want to claim benefits or anything like that, it has to go through the VA. So in August 2013, she met with John. It's kind of confusing because obviously the senator she works for is called John, but this is John Burroughs. So she met with John. So he was looking for help with his DD-214s and his medical records. So a DD-214 is a document that's issued to all service members who have been honourably discharged from active duty. But John was never given one. And you need it to verify military service so that you can actually apply for the benefit. So he had nothing. So basically the Air Force was denying the fact that he ever served in the Air Force at all.
That's gonna sting.
Yeah, and it made him, he got to the point where he was like, am I insane? Like, I did serve in the Air Force, right? Because
so she's gaslighting him.
Yeah, basically. So Cheryl got the Department of Justice involved, and they sent someone with high-level clearance to review his documents. But even they couldn't get access to them. They didn't have high enough clearance to view his records.
How do you get even higher clearance to get? And surely, like, by then it's like, what is in this guy's medical records that you can't disclose?
Everything was locked down, apart from the fact that he did serve in the Air Force. So obviously they could see that, but that was it. Cheryl then received a letter from one of the lieutenants at the DOJ saying they don't care if she works for the senator. There's no way that they're ever going to get their hands on John's medical records, basically.
That's a very nefarious letter.
Yeah.
You ain't getting your hands on this.
And so at this point, she was working with Congress, CIA, FBI, DOJ, and the DOF. And they were all covering up John's records. Eventually, the Air Force and the Department of Defense and the VA agreed that John was injured in the event at Rendlesham Forest, but they never publicly or privately stated to anyone what actually happened in that event to cause his injuries. And even though John's receiving his benefits now, they've actually told him he will never, ever gain access to his medical records.
That sounds like a challenge to me.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was his story, basically. So he's never going to know what actually happened to him to cause those injuries.
Do you know what really makes me laugh about the whole, like, government covering up UFO events and everything? If it's genuinely not a UFO, why so suspicious?
Well, if you think, though, if this was so, the Pentagon and things, they have their own operations. If they're re-engineering alien technology, which is claimed that they could be doing that, and they did that, and it crashed and it injured
servicemen.
Can you imagine if that story got out, the uproar that there would be that they've injured one of their own re-engineering alien technology?
But to me, it would be so much easier for the Air Force to just fake some records about a less alarming story to give to John and just be like, it was just this.
What would you say it was, though? What would cause radiation?
I don't know. Just anything other than you will never gain access, because that to me
is fuels the fire.
No one can tell me no anyway. Tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it. So, and just what are you hiding? If they had just come out and just faked something, it would have been a lot better. That's just it.
Well, at least they're being honest. In this case.
Yeah. Withholding the truth, but in an honest way. They're not bullshitting that they're withholding
Take your
the
benefits.
truth. Yeah, just take your benefits and shut up.
It doesn't matter how you were injured, John. Just take the money. It's fine.
It's like, I've only got 3 years left to live, thank you very much.
Radiation damage to my eyes. And they're like, yeah, but here's a tenner. Buy yourself something nice.
Roswell?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, when I was watching the documentary, I noticed that I sort of made some connections in my head, and I'm going to talk you through these connections, and stay with me.
Okay.
Stay with me, and you lot stay with me, because the way my mind works is a bit... So, when they're making the counter report to Arrow, they meet with a guy called Bob Jacobs. And Bob Jacobs was a lieutenant in the military, and he has information that Arrow basically shut down. And when Arrow shut it down, it really made him angry. So George goes to meet with him, and Bob Jacobs' account is they were doing this nuclear warhead testing, and he got the whole thing on film. And the warhead goes up, and when the film was developed, his major called him into the major's office, and there was 2 men in there in grey suits that stood against the wall and said nothing. He later learned from the major that they were CIA. And they show him the film, and they say, sit and watch this. And on the film, it's the warhead going along, the nuclear warhead, and a UFO type thing comes out and shoots laser beams at it from all different angles. And when the UFO flies out frame, the nuclear warhead drops out the frame. And the major asked Bob, were you guys messing around with this? And Bob's like, I think it's pretty clear we've got a UFO. Probably very naively, with the CIA against the wall, which he didn't know was CIA, but if I'm seeing 2 men in grey suits standing against the wall saying nothing, I probably know not to say it's a
not
UFO.
HR.
And he's like, the major's like, do not speak of this. As far as we're concerned, the whole thing never happened. And it really affected Bob Jacobs, because he was like, when I saw that, all of a sudden, we're not alone anymore in the universe. It was a really big thing, and it's a really big revelation, because I didn't believe before I saw that. And when I was watching that, it made me make some connections to an episode of Ancient Aliens I watched about the Roswell incident. And I don't believe everything I hear in Ancient Aliens, because they have a lot of wild theories. And if you ever want to watch the show, it's a ride. Some of the connections they make and theories they put out are really wild, and the animations are even wilder. But they do have some pretty good facts in there. And they said that a lot of activity, UFO activity, increased around the time of World War II. And World War II is quite a significant conflict in human history. And that is when humans started messing with atomic weaponry.
Yeah.
So, World War II ended in 1945. The Roswell incident happened in 1947.
Okay.
And Roswell Army Base, or military base, I think it was an Air Force base, so I'm just going to say military base just to cover myself, because that could be anything.
Okay.
But it was a good military base. This had the best of the best in it. It was the only one at its times with capability to test atomic weaponry or handle atomic weaponry. It's a conspiracy theory, so do you want to put the hats on?
Let's do it. Let's put the hats on. Dust off the old hat.
Yeah. We realised we hadn't wore the conspiracy hats in quite some time, so we wanted to get them out, dust them off and put them on, put them to work. So, the Roswell incident is a conspiracy that a lot of people know by name, but not many people actually look into it. And I personally, it's only very recently that I started believing in aliens or anything UFO related.
Really?
Yeah. I used to think it was all for tinfoil hat wearers.
Did you? I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, who have I been sat next to?
Who's my co-host?
Jesus.
No, honestly, it's not until it's one of those things that unless you have an experience or until you really start looking into it that you really believe. And
I don't know, because I think it's quite naive to think that out of all
I
of
was
that
naive.
space out there, we're the only things.
I was very naive.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like come at you. I'm just saying.
No, I admit it. I'm self-aware. When I started believing in aliens, and it sort of opened up this big can of worms, because like we said, aliens is such a big topic. And when I made this connection of the nuclear sort of activity and Roswell, I really started to look into the Roswell incident. And this is one of those things that I'd heard of, sort of dismissed as like hoaxes or fake witnesses. And then I looked into it and I was like, that's pretty wild, actually. Could be something to this. Like I said, the Roswell Air Base was the only thing at its time that sort of dealt with atomic weaponry. And actually, in the months leading up to Roswell, in New Mexico, over the Roswell sort of desert area, there was up to like 300 sightings or something of UFOs. So there was a lot of activities in that area. And to me, it only makes sense, like, our aircraft fails, like, human aircraft fails from time to time.
Yeah.
So it only makes sense that if a higher sort of level of technology, it's still going to fail from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And where you see increased activity, the likelihood of a crash is higher.
Yeah.
Makes sense in my brain. So in July 1947... on a night where there was one of the worst lightning storms that Roswell had ever seen, there was a lot of activity. The sheriff, George Wilcox, the local sheriff in Roswell, received loads of calls from local people saying there's weird lights in the sky, there's objects moving really bizarrely, they're really quick. And actually the military base at Roswell saw a blip on their radar, and this blip wouldn't go away. So it got to the point where they were like, the radar's malfunctioning, we're going to take it apart, and then hopefully the blip goes away.
Yeah.
And all goes back to normal. So they took it apart, found no fault, and when they put it back together, the blip was still there. So a couple of mornings after this lightning storm and all this activity, a man called Mac Brazel, who was a local rancher, came into George Wilcox's office with some bizarre debris, and it was like tinfoil.
Yeah.
But that you couldn't crumple in your hand, or you could crumple it in your hand, but when you let go of it, it just pinged back to its regular form. And it was really strong, but weightless at the same time. So not like anything that you would have ever seen before. So the two men were looking at it very perplexed, and George Wilcox decides the only way forward is to contact the local military base and they can come and have a look at it. So the local military base sent Major Jesse Marcel to come and assist with the cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
And he arrived on the scene, cleaned up some of the debris, which was literally that weird tinfoil-like substance and some rubber tubing from Mac Brazel's account. But what Jesse Marcel also saw was an I-beam.
An I-beam?
Yeah, so you know, like, I picture it, the UFOs have like that centre where they beam stuff.
Right, yeah.
So it'd be one of them. So he takes this debris and he brings it home to his son and his wife, and this was in early hours of the morning, and they get it out and try and piece it together on the kitchen floor. And Jesse Marcel Jr., his son, gives an account saying there was an I-beam with some weird hieroglyphic writing on. So I found this really interesting because there is another alleged UFO crash, and it made me think of it, that happened in 1941, so some years before Roswell, in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And we know about this crash because a Reverend William Hoffman was called into the crash to give victims spiritual support before they passed.
Yeah.
So the fire department called him and he was expecting to go to a road traffic accident, but what he actually found was a flying saucer-shaped craft, and I think there was something like 2 victims outside of the wreck and 1 inside. And William Hoffman actually got to go inside the craft, and he said in there was these weird hieroglyphic writings on it. So it just, like, the similarity just made me think of that. And the reason we know about the one in Missouri is because William Hoffman must have told his wife, because when the military arrived on the scene, they obviously gave the keep quiet orders to everyone on scene.
Yeah.
So he actually didn't tell anyone, or he must have told his wife while he was alive, but no one else knew about it. And when he had passed, his wife, on her deathbed, told the rest of the family his account that he gave. And that's how we know about that one. And I want to make it clear that I'm not going to go into any others because I just don't have the time or the willpower to sit through and look through all the information. But they've happened all over.
Yeah.
All over the world, not just in the United States. And there was one actually in Russia, because Russia has no chill. They shot one down. They engaged with it.
Well, don't you remember, though, when the Chinese spy balloon was spotted over America and they shot that down? Yeah. And then they shot 3 more down, but they wouldn't say what they were. And that's when they then said they recovered non-human biologics from the... So they shot those down too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have no chill.
Yeah. Well, that was in America. That wasn't in Russia.
Yeah, but just military subject. They can't just go peacefully, can they? Back to the Roswell incident, and Jesse Marcel and Jesse Marcel Jr., they both described the debris in the same way as Mac Brazel, that you could crumple it but it would ping back, and they actually said if you hit a sledgehammer onto it, the sledgehammer would just bounce off of it. So this stuff was bizarre. They had not seen anything like it before. So he collected up the remains and actually then delivered them to the military base after he had showed his wife and son. And the military base in Roswell then sent them on to Ohio for further inspection.
Yeah.
A couple of days after, surprisingly, the military's PR representative came out, and there was a story in the paper that the military had in their possession a flying saucer or a flying disc. They came out and said, we've got that and there's been a UFO crash down in Roswell. A few hours after it came out and they said that, it then got completely stamped out. They then were like, yeah, no, we just made a mistake. It's actually not a UFO. It's just a regular weather balloon. So everyone move along. There's nothing to see here and we don't want to hear about it again. And Matt Brazel also came out and retracted his original statement and said, yeah, I got confused. It is the material of a weather balloon.
I got confused at what an alien ship and weather balloon look like. Whoops.
Literally. So the whole issue of the Roswell UFO wreckage actually went away for quite some time until a bloke called Dr. Friedman got involved. And Friedman was recruited by a doctor called Dr. Bob Wood, and Wood was given a huge budget by an organisation, I think it was a university, to basically do a study on whether UFOs are real. Mm-hmm. And he recruited Dr. Friedman for his work, and after an 18-month study they concluded, yeah, UFOs are real and they're out there.
Just like that.
Yeah, just as easy as that. So, Dr. Bob Wood was going to go to Congress and present his findings, but then pulled out because he thought, nah, this is actually going to hurt my career.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go public with this. But Dr. Friedman took a different approach, and he started giving talks to the scientific community. He started doing further research, and he was actually nicknamed the flying saucer physicist. So he was hot on it. But even in 1978, he had not heard about the Roswell incident, the bizarre Roswell incident, until a TV producer said to him about Roswell, and he said, I'm actually radio buddies with Major Jesse Marcel.
Over.
So Friedman was like, can you get us in contact? And when Friedman contacted Major Marcel, he started talking about what really happened at Roswell. Jesse Marcel sort of stated that anyone dealing with the wreckage at the time, they knew it wasn't a weather balloon.
Yeah.
They knew they had something more on their hands, but they were all given the keep quiet order.
It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, that you have to then go out and be like, sorry, it was a weather balloon.
Yeah. And in the efforts to basically elude suspicion, the army did actually send out a weather balloon, and they pictured Major Marcel and a guy called General Ramey with the wreckage. but it was just the weather balloon wreckage.
Yeah.
And Major Marcel was like, you know that picture that was in the papers when they came out and said, yeah, it's just a weather balloon? He was like, that's not from the wreckage. So Friedman knew there was something.
Yeah.
So he starts interviewing all these witnesses and starts talking very publicly about the incident, thinking there's something to this, there's something there, which in turn put pressure on the military.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1993, they released a report about the events of Roswell, an internal investigation into the events at Roswell, and they were like, look, we've found no evidence that it's a UFO crash, but what we will tell you is that the weather balloon story, it is a cover-up. So they said it was a weather balloon, but it wasn't your normal average weather balloon. It was a special weather balloon.
Of course.
That could detect Russian atomic activity.
What's that got to do with the weather?
I don't know. I don't know the
It's
science.
a special
of it,
weather balloon. It came from space. And it's not ours.
So, and this project was called Project Mogul. So again, they were like, look, you've got us, but case closed, move along. There's really nothing else to see here. But from this report, the public weren't as accepting as the first time.
No, because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
They should have just doubled down on nothing.
Yeah. So they had basically said that the reason people were getting confused was because Project Mogul, it was top secret. Not many people at Roswell knew about it. That's why Major Jesse Marcel couldn't tell the wreckage of a normal weather balloon and this. So they gave that as the explanation, but people were still like, nah, there's just something more to it. And by this point, you've got to think Roswell happened back in 1947.
Yeah.
This is 1993. So witnesses that one time didn't talk, they had started talking. There was buzzes about town.
Lips are loose.
So it put even more pressure on the military, and the military produced a second report in 1997 that basically said, okay, we've looked into it further. However, the reports from Roswell military base were all destroyed from 1945 and 1949.
Oh, what a shame.
And there's no evidence to say who destroyed them.
What a coincidence. They're like, it wasn't a special weather balloon, it was a special weather balloon. Oh, sorry, guys.
So all up to this point, it's quite peculiar, I think it's fair to say.
It's just they're making it worse and worse.
Yeah, they literally can't stop. Just wait. So it's all a bit peculiar, the weird cover-up, the fact that they had lost the records, all these witnesses, the bizarre debris that military men, who were the best of the best, couldn't tell was human material. So it gets more bizarre because, like I said, over the course of time, witnesses started coming out and talking about their experiences.
Yeah.
And it came to light to Dr. Friedman that there was a second crash site a few miles south of Corona, New Mexico. And at the second crash site, there were bodies. There were apparently 5 bodies, and they were 4 foot tall in appearance, pale skin, no noses but with nostrils, large head, large eyes, no ears, typical alien.
Yeah, classic average alien.
Classic run-of-the-mill alien. And one witness actually described them looking like dolls, which we'll come back to. So just remember that. So there was quite a few people that came out and said they saw the bodies. So a Melvin Brown, who was a guard of the debris of the second crash site,
Yeah.
he was given strict orders to not look under this tarp and to just guard it. And when everyone turned their backs, he was like, I'm just going to take a little peek. So he looked.
You just hear him like, oh my god, isn't it?
Yeah. He's like, what could they be? Oh my god.
Guys, I did it.
So he saw them and he gave the descriptions as everyone else who had seen them. And other people who had seen them could have been civilians, the fire department, anyone who was on that second crash site before the military came and locked it down. And when they came and locked it down, they got it cleared within 6 hours. So it was pretty quick work.
Mm-hmm.
So there was also a local mortician, Glenn Dennis, who received a request from the military for small caskets. And when he went to the hospital, he also was shown the weird debris.
Yeah.
For some reason, he saw it. I don't know if he saw the bodies, but from what I read,
that would make the most sense.
Yeah, he saw the debris at the hospital, so I don't know if they picked out the victims. I just don't know. But he saw something, and they were like, "This didn't happen. We're not here. You're not here. If you tell anyone, you're going to have a problem." So he keeps his mouth shut until, obviously, years later when he came out and said it. So the bodies were sealed into a crate and taken to a hangar which is guarded over the night by military police who are ordered not to approach this, and then it's moved to Kirtland Air Base on the Los Alamos. Which was the most secure military base in the world at that time. So Walter Holt was the PR relationship officer. He observes in the hangar at Kirtland a large 12 to 15 foot metallic egg shape with no portholes, wings, tail sections or landing gear, and he also sees the bodies under the tarp, and again describes them in the same appearance as the other people have. So all of these witnesses, because there was loads, I think Charles Berlitz and Bob Moore, I want to say their names were, they did a book called The Roswell Incident that I really want to read, and they had over 90 witness accounts in there.
Wow.
So there's a lot of witnesses to these things. So, but all these witnesses were told by the military, "Shut up."
How has 90 people come across it?
For the love of God, stop talking.
Stop lifting the tarp. We said don't lift.
They go to one of their like seniors and they're like shell shocked, and they're like, "You looked under the tarp, didn't you?"
We heard you scream. We know you looked under the tarp.
I told you not to look. What do you want from me?
Why say that? Oh, would you look under it if they didn't say don't look under it?
Yeah.
Regardless, you just have a little look.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well. They might
like I said, if you tell me not to do something...
No, but if they didn't say anything. If they just said, can you just watch this body?
Yeah, I would probably do. I'd be like...
Body?
Yeah. There's rumbles you had a UFO. I'm gonna look. It came out of the paper. I know this isn't a weather balloon. A weather balloon doesn't have bodies inside of it.
Who's in the weather balloon?
So yeah, I would look regardless.
No, fair
Any
enough.
situation you can give me, I'm looking. Unless they told me to look, then I'd be like, no, actually.
You can't tell me what to do.
Would you look, Liv?
Yeah.
If they just didn't say anything, you just had to guard the top.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you just would want to know, wouldn't you?
Nature, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little peek. Would you rather they just say don't? No, they didn't say don't look at the alien.
They tell you, don't take a peek at the aliens.
There's an
They're
alien
just
under
like, what?
I was going to say, would you rather not be pre-warned, but they didn't yet. Don't look at the alien body under the tarp.
I think my mind would be going a million miles an hour. So I picture it like there's tarp behind me and there's all these officials in the room just busying themselves and I'm the guard. And my mind is just, while they're in here, my mind is going a million miles an hour. Like, what if it's actually an alien? Like, what's it going to look like? Oh no, I'm being silly. It's not actually an alien. Like, maybe you should look just to confirm that it's a human. Like, just to set your mind at rest. And then they leave and I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God.
I just know they'd be giving me the instructions and that would be my thoughts the whole time. And they'd be like, okay. And I'm like, sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
leave the room straight away. It's like, oh. You know now, if it was done in modern day times, it would be on TikTok. Just like,
100%.
come with me to lift up the top at Roswell.
Get ready with me.
Anyway, so I hear you ask, were the bodies ever addressed by the military? Were these 4-foot elephants in the room
Probably
ever
not.
addressed? They were.
Halloween decks.
No. So in the 1997 report, they were like, I think we need to address these bodies now, like this is actually getting out of control. So they said, we had an operation called Operation High Dive where we basically dropped crash test dummies to see what drops were survivable with parachutes.
It looked like aliens.
That's all it was. These crash test dummies were 6 foot, but a lot of them lost limbs, a lot of them were burnt, so they kind of looked weird, and someone said they looked like dolls. That one person said they kind of had a doll-like appearance. And do you know that one person, when he was quoted in the 1997 report, was 55. When he saw the dolls, the bodies, he was 5.
Oh my god.
So, they also really messed up on the fact that this Operation High Dive that they said this is where the bodies have come from, Operation High Dive didn't take place until 1953.
I also love how they got coffins for mannequins.
Yeah, it's just all the math is really mathing for the military side of things.
And you just know they spent ages coming up with that as well.
They were like, 6 years after it, we did do that Operation High Dive. Like, we could just put that in.
Someone said dolls, right? You remember that?
So they said about Operation High Dive, and obviously people started to look into it, and they were like, hang on, that's 6 years, that started 6 years after this. Like, what are you on about? Like, they were found at the time, and the military then had to come out to that and say, that is an issue we've got with time compression.
You're so right there.
Do you know what time compression is?
I've never heard of that.
Neither have I, but I think it's military talk for, you've got the dates wrong.
A typo.
No, just a long time has passed and people just don't know the dates.
Oh, you're forgetting yourself.
Even though there would be documentation for it. But they were like, that's an issue with time compression.
We're
You've
going to
just got
gaslight the entire nation.
I can imagine the meeting and they're like, do we just come out and tell the truth? And they're like, we need to gaslight the shit out of them.
No, one guy's like, should we tell the truth? Everyone just cracks up. Like, Jerry, you're fucking hilarious. I love this guy. No. We lie.
We're not doing that. Just like, we've already lied this far. Do you know how stupid we'd look coming out and being like, yes, we actually lied.
Let's just tell everyone that they're not remembering it right. Case closed.
What I didn't understand was why they weren't like, oh, silly us, we meant Operation something else, and then just made up a whole new operation. Like, again,
We meant
why is the
Lowdive.
cover-up so sloppy?
It's quite insulting, really.
Yeah, that they think, there's a whole book on it. There's this guy giving talks about it. There's 90 witnesses we've got running around, 90 plus probably. There's all this public speculation and people really looking into this. Let's just give them a couple of breadcrumbs. Let's not even commit to the lie. So, in the early 2000s, more speculation came out because technology was getting a little bit better. And you know that picture I said about of Jesse Marcel and General Ramey
With the weather
with
balloon.
the weather balloon?
Yeah.
That wasn't even the
A
wreckage
special,
site.
special one.
General Ramey had a memo in his hand, which was obviously at the time blurry.
Yeah.
So no one could read the words. But with technology in the 2000s, they, like...
high-resed it.
Yeah, they made it readable, and Friedman had a look at it, and he saw the words, victims of a wreck, a disc is the new find,
Oh.
and it said about the PR team making up the story of the weather balloon. So it was pretty damn telling.
Oh, what was their response to that?
Never was one. They were probably like, I wouldn't trust your lying eyes.
Just don't even feed into it. We're just not even going to reply.
You know those, like, fuckboy men who are just like, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? That's literally the military. This case. So, anyway, that's where the evidence that I looked into kind of trails off, but there's a whole book about this, so I imagine I've actually left some bits out, but this is just to give you a little bit of taster of it. But as it's only fair to tell both sides, as you know me, I just love being as unbiased as possible. I thought it was good to bring in that a lot of witness accounts we have are from family and friends of the witnesses, so it's not of the witness themselves. So that can be seen as a bit suspect because obviously stories can change over time and they can't be scrutinised and they can be exaggerated and things like that. Also, some of the key witnesses, like Jesse Marcel, he's not the most honest guy.
Oh.
So he actually lied about some of his military achievements. So he has been shown to lie about some things, but does that mean we don't believe him about this? Or parts of his story about this? I don't know. This is just...
The thing is, he doesn't really get anything out of this, whereas his achievements, he gets a bit of glory. He just... I don't know what he would gain.
Well, it's literally the boy crying wolf, but one time there actually was a wolf.
Yeah.
So it could be true. But another key witness was the PR guy, Walter Holt. And his affidavit, his signed affidavit, was written by a UFO author. And he didn't read it before he signed it. He just signed it. So it could be biased towards the UFO theory. But other than that, that's the story. And the story of Roswell continues to puzzle people to this day. And I don't think we'll ever really know what happened in 1947. But to me, like I said at the start, I don't really care if it's an alien or not. I would rather alien, just because that's so wild. But it's just, there's so many things that just don't add up, that there's something there.
Yeah, either way, the story is not true. Like, there's another... It's not the real account, whatever the real account is.
And I find that so interesting. And I think, like, we've got many reasons for doing this pod, but these are just things that I love to look into.
Yeah.
And without this, I've got no motivation to look into them. Like, obviously, I've got myself and my love for it, but with general life, it falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm searching through loads of Roswell files without this to give me the carrot and stick? No. So, yeah, I found that really interesting, and I found it really interesting about the nuclear sort of connection in the documentary as well. But yeah, that's Roswell.
Well, I'm going to take this off
Yeah,
now.
I'm sweating.
And I am going to end the episode on an alternate theory for aliens, something that maybe we haven't considered before.
And they touched on this in the documentary, didn't they?
Yes, they also left it to the end, and it blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, I have never considered that before, and it actually makes so much sense.
Did you have a "That's So Raven" moment?
Yeah.
Where you looked to the camera and I'm like...
Audible gasp. Yeah, it really was crazy. Okay, so the theory we're gonna end on is time travel. Okay. I've tried to take out all the, like...
jargon.
Yeah, as much as possible.
Thank you. No, seriously, thank you.
So, one of the strands for the time travel hypothesis is that essentially there could be nomadic tribes in space. We always think that aliens are from another planet out there, but why do we think that? There's no evidence to suggest that. It could be that they're all nomadic beings, because if you think of it, so time is relative. So what would be 2,000 years on Earth for us, for a craft that can travel near the speed of light, could be 2 weeks. So why would an alien that's planet-based come to Earth to do whatever research they're doing, for it then to take them, well,
However
2
long to
weeks,
get
but
back,
on their
yeah.
planet, 2,000 years?
Yeah.
Because all the scientists that would be wanting to receive that data have probably passed away.
Yeah.
Society's completely changed. Their friends and family would be gone. It just doesn't make any sense. What would make sense is if they're if they all have individual crafts, and what
Yeah.
they do is they go on missions, doesn't have to all be on Earth, but throughout
Yeah.
space that take roughly the same amount of time, and they agree a time and a place to meet back up and all share their findings and do it like that.
That's yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Um,
with you. I'm following you so far.
yeah. So I've got like, I don't know if the time relative makes sense to everyone, but when I say that, to put it in another term, say you're watching a film and you times 10 fast forward. You leave the room, you come back in, that was a couple of seconds for you.
Yeah.
But for the film, loads of the film has passed. It's kind of like that. So that's the example. It's plausible to think, and it really accounts for why aliens haven't made any contact with us, like so blatantly.
Yeah.
Because what would be the point if it's going to take 2,000 years more till their next trip for us?
Yeah.
By the time they've made contact and come back again, it's all been forgotten, and they'd have to
Yeah.
start all over again. There's no point to that. Another good example of why this might be the case, if you think about all the accounts throughout history of what aliens look like, they remain pretty much unchanged.
Yeah.
Their physical appearance, the crafts that they're in, all make sense, because if they could even be the same crafts that we've seen in Egyptian times to
Yeah.
now, but it's just obviously taken them weeks and it's taken us thousands of years. That's why they're all the same, and their technology hasn't advanced like crazy like what ours has in that time.
Do you know, I think for me, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence ever is when multiple civilizations see the same thing who wouldn't have any reason to even know or copy the other. So that makes
Exactly.
so much sense of like, we've all seen the same thing.
But then, just to make it a little bit more interesting, okay, so we think time travel is possible. Could it not be possible that they're not aliens, they're humans from the future? That's very interesting. And there's a really interesting theory from Michael Masters in a book that he's written, and it's quite a long name, Identified Flying Objects, a multidisciplinary scientific approach to the UFO phenomenon. It just rolls off the tongue. But basically what he's saying is that close encounters with aliens have told us that they're bipedal, hairless, human-like beings with large brains, large eyes, small noses, small mouths, with the ability to communicate in our own language, either, moving their mouth telepathically, wherever it will be. So we know that their technology, what we found, some of it that we found, although we don't have that technology, it's based on technology that we do have today. And we know that we exist, humans exist. We've had a long evolutionary history on the planet, and we know our technology is going to be more advanced in the future. So is it really too far of a stretch to think that these people are us? And it just makes so much sense why throughout history of alien encounters they've been so against using nuclear weaponry, and they've always given us a message that we need to look after our planet, that we're damaging our planet. Could that be because these people are us?
Already know.
They already know what's going to happen. Are they trying to change what's going to happen?
I see a lot of weight to that, because even there's a theory that we used to live on Mars, isn't there? I don't know if you've come across that.
No, I've not seen that.
But the Mars rover has got samples, obviously, and we've brought them back to Earth and analysed them, and the samples show this element that only occurs after nuclear weapons have been detonated.
Really? That's interesting.
We'll have to do an episode about Mars findings, because Mars is wild.
Yeah.
Honestly. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And so there's been studies of our skull shape throughout our evolution. And based on that, they've done projections of what our skull shape will be like in the future. And so our skulls have changed quite a lot, especially since we had the creation of fire and eating meat. Eating meat actually made our brains get bigger, and our faces got smaller. And our brain went from being to the back of our heads to the front.
Yeah.
So it actually sits above our eyes. We're the only, I think, mammals that have our brains sat on top of our eyes. But it's theorized that actually our brains are going to increase in size, which accounts for the big bulbous sort of skull shape. And our faces will get smaller. Smaller nose, smaller mouth.
I saw
And
the pictures.
because our eyes because the brain's getting bigger and obviously our eyes are below our brain,
Yeah.
the only place they can go is out. So that accounts for how they get out, and they're starting to grow to the sides of our faces. So it's theorized that our skulls are already going into they said it's more like a feminine skull, because we have the smaller faces, and the projection is it's going to continue that way, and we will look very similar to the description of the grey aliens. So that's
in
just
hundreds of thousands of years.
this isn't for a while, but
Yeah.
that's the theory, that our brains will increase in size and our faces will get smaller. So you think, okay, if it's us, why are there abductions of people? What's that about? That doesn't make any sense. But there could be scientific reasons behind that. Because if you think there's gaps in history that they're potentially trying to piece together, so it could be anthropologists, historians, or people looking into linguistics. The only way to piece those gaps of information is by abducting people and studying them that way. Then possibly that could explain why humans are being abducted.
In all fairness, if you think about it, if we had that technology now to time travel, scientists would go back and analyse past humans and think what their makeup is, why they, if they could go back to like the first human, for example, they would go back to all of that. And it is really bizarre about our appearance being not like aliens now, but getting more alien. It's like that missing link argument where we are hairless. Why are we hairless? Because it doesn't make any sense for us to be hairless, and then when we became hairless we started wearing fur. So it doesn't make any sense.
Putting clothes on.
It seems like we are connected. If they are out there,
Yeah.
we are connected to them in some way, shape or form.
And then you think, if you could time travel, what would you do? You'd go back and look at events of interest to you. You'd probably go look at how the pyramids were built. You'd probably go look at some of the 7 wonders of the world.
That's very true.
So then we
would.
have time travel tourism. So that probably could account for why some of these really big events in time have seen UFO events as well, because people might be going back on their holidays to go and see it. So I think...
And the military stuff is them trying to prevent us going the same way that they know it's happening.
It's very interesting.
That's job, that's work. And the
We got work
pyramids
and we
are
got fun.
holiday. No, I was saying to Kieran the other night, not the other night, it was quite some time ago, but when we were watching something about the pyramids, and I was like, if I could time travel, I was saying, I want to time travel so bad because I just need to be there. I need to see how these were built.
Yeah, and that's just human curiosity. So, is that part of it? It's really interesting to think. But there's so many other theories of why aliens would be coming here. Are we an experiment to them? Have we been created by them and they're just watching it play out like a real life Sims game?
I came up with a theory the other day about it all, and this is a very vague theory and probably has nothing to do with it. But what if they're just trolling us?
It could be.
Just doing all these things. Should we shit them up?
What if we are the Florida of the universe and they just come back here for shits and gigs? They're like, let's see what those jokers are up to.
They're like, Steve, shall we put out a laser beam on one of them and see how scared they get? Let's watch them run.
Literally, all we need to do is land here, and they will be gassed.
They just do it as a bit of an ego.
It's literally like they're Emmerdale.
They've got it live streamed on their version of TikTok.
They're all like... Yeah, and there's like theories about, I mean, we could go on this forever,
Yeah.
but how aliens don't have souls. And so they can't reproduce. You need a soul to be able to reproduce. So is it that because we have souls we can reproduce, are they using us for that aspect?
Speaking of, I saw a video this week. It's so random. Why do I come across these things? I saw a video of a sperm going into an egg.
Okay.
And have you seen? It actually causes like this little flash of light, like a soul being created.
Does it?
If you've never seen it, go and watch it and then laugh at me.
No, of course I've never seen it.
Because yeah, it's like a little like glow of light, and it's like obviously
how is that,
an energy
how is that
thing.
captured?
I don't know.
What was-
I just saw it. I didn't prepare myself to talk about it, so I didn't get the info. I just found, when you said no soul and you need a soul to reproduce, I was like, oh, that makes sense. There was a flash of light coming out of the collision between the sperm and the egg. I'll bring it up and they'll probably think it's really interesting. And now look what you've done.
You've shorn me down.
Liv, I'll find you the video and we'll try
No,
and
it's
put it up
interesting.
here.
I just wonder.
Oh, yeah, yes.
No, we don't need it. I've seen it.
Liv's like, I'm not going to put it up. I just want to watch it.
I really want to see that.
Okay,
No,
I'll
I
try
just
and
want to
find
know
it.
what in like how it was recorded. Like, how did they capture this? Was it like heat? Was it like a heat thing? Like, how do they know?
It was probably through like ultrasound or some. Actually, no, because how would you get?
That's what
that
I mean, like,
position?
how-
Unless it was artificial insemination. Yeah, let's just say it was artificial insemination.
No, I want to know what it was. But that is interesting. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
But there's so many theories. But that's just our first episode on it. So
yes.
have you got your own theories? You got something you want us to deep dive into that you CBA to? Or that you
We'll
want to
do
hear
the
about?
legwork for you. What I would really like to happen is we do a few alien episodes and we can create a little alien playlist on
That'd be good.
YouTube. I don't know so much about Spotify because I don't really use it. That's you guys sort that out. But the YouTube, I would like a little alien section.
We could do the same for
because
cryptids because we'll
Exactly.
be doing
Yeah.
more of those.
I really like the topic. I find it so interesting, like I've said
Yes.
about 4 times in this episode. So
Do you find it comforting to think there's aliens out there, or does it shit you up?
I could just go either way. Because like you said, once you realise it, it's like, oh yeah, it's pretty silly to think we're the only ones out there. It shits me up how big space is and how we just are like a tiny little speck.
Yeah.
But in the day-to-day scheme of things, I just think, well, if they're out there, they're out there. But the government's covering up? Now that's interesting.
I think that'd be sick. Imagine if you could like just travel to an alien planet. How cool will that be?
Literally, I don't even know because I won't get in an aeroplane, obviously, so I don't know if I could get into outer space. I watched someone.
It could just be a portal. We could just be portaling there.
Yeah.
I want to know what pets they have on the alien planets.
Yeah. Probably all those cryptids that they're letting out on Earth.
I want a grebulite.
But anyway, we're just rambling now, so
Yeah, we are.
we'll leave you to your evening or day or work day, whatever you're doing. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We hope you find some of the things interesting, and we hope you can
Yeah.
put up with the tangents.
Yeah, or just a little sprinkle of spooky and kooky for you for your day.
Yeah, if you like the episode, please give us a like and subscribe. If you want to make our day, subscribe, because we're a small channel, so any subscribe we get.
Best believe we're
does.
checking every day.
We post it on the group chat every time, so you're noticed, you're valued, and it really does make our day. So if you want to do that, please subscribe. Give the video a like if you like it.
Comment
And
that spaceship.
If you
Comment
want
that
to see the little alien playlist, if you like this and want more alien content, comment like an
A
alien
spaceship.
spaceship.
Or a face, alien face.
I think there's an alien face. I'm not sure about a spaceship.
There's
Comment
got to be a spaceship.
UFO type emoji, related emoji below, and
Yeah.
that'll be very much appreciated. But yeah, see you later.
Bye.